I have filmed this video so many times. Anyway, hello. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Brooke. I haven't been around for a while because I'm a lazy person. Today I'm going to do my December wrap-up. I'm going to talk about the books I read in order from least favorite to most favorite and try not to make this a 30-minute video. The first book, the book I did not like at all, was Illuminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, and this has really gotten some good reviews, but did not work for me. It is ostensibly about, it's sold as like this horror sci-fi cave dwelling exciting horror novel, right? So we follow basically two characters. There is Geyer, who is a young woman going down into this cave, and then we have her handler M above the surface. That's it. So already the tension and the horror is pretty much erased, because if our main character here, Geyer, is going down in the cave all by herself and she's the one telling the story, it is very unlikely that anything terribly bad is going to happen to her, because she has to continue to tell the story. So that told me this book is really not about that. Very quickly I realized this book is about the relationship she has with the handler M above. Yeah, bad things happen down in this cave. I mean, like falls and near drowning and suit malfunction and things like that, but it almost felt sort of like The Martian in that way, where you're just sort of fighting the elements. There's kind of a monster introduced in this, but doesn't get a whole lot of airplay. I think most of the tension is supposed to come from the fact that lots of people have died trying to do the same thing she's doing. I don't know. The stakes were nothing for me. So this is character driven, and it's about how these two women, how their relationship grows as this exhibition goes on, which could really be interesting, except that I didn't like either of these characters, and somehow something that starts from a very toxic, antagonistic, fucked up way turns into romance. And I can't tell if I'm supposed to be good with that and find that romantic, or if I'm supposed to be questioning that. I think it's toxic all the way through. I think the reason that they come together is because they're sort of so dependent on each other in this very dramatic life or death situation that sort of evokes these deep emotions. But I imagine in 10 years, when that's all gone, I don't know what's going to be left. I mean, literally, this woman has set up this other woman based on lies to go down into this cave to die. That's a bad place to start a relationship. And it doesn't really get better to me as the story goes along. So I wasn't into this at all. I don't think any part of it was good. I've seen people call it, like, is there such a complex queer relationship at the heart of this? I guess I don't think that's complex. I just think it's rotten. I just think it's really bad. And it's something I've been thinking a lot about in fiction. In fictional storytelling, you know, how much discussion there's been recently with the Reylo relationship in Star Wars, and how people love it and romanticize it, but it's still very toxic. I felt a lot like that here. I mean, if someone has sent you down somewhere to get you killed, has lied to you about it the whole time, and you genuinely dislike this person, I don't know how you get over that, but it's just me, I guess. So that didn't work for me. The narrator, I listened to an audio, the narrator was quite good. I will say that. And other people really like it, so. Then, unfortunately, I also really didn't like The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. These are both basically 2.5 star books for me. The Dutch House is literary fiction. I mean, by definition, nothing happens here. It's not very plot driven. It's character focused on these two siblings who grow up in this really fancy Dutch house, have that taken from them, and then how that affects the next several decades of their life and their relationship going forward. That's it. That's it. Man, I didn't like these characters. So the siblings, Maeve and Danny, I didn't care. And because I didn't care, I mean, the only person I cared about in this book was Danny's wife, who, wow, I don't know. I felt so bad for her. And I think one of the this book is called The Dutch House, and the Dutch House is supposed to be this big part of the story. I mean, they're obsessed with it, these siblings, who, I mean, they're just sort of toxic too. Maybe I'm just really over toxic characters. I don't know. But the Dutch House should, if you're calling the book The Dutch House, and it's supposed to be playing such a pivotal role, it should feel like a character, and I just never got that feeling. I don't think enough was done to bring that house to life or to make me care about it at all. And this is my first Ann Patchett, so this was sad for me. I don't know if I'll read other Ann Patchett, to be honest with you. The writing was fine, but I also don't necessarily think it, like, compelled me to keep reading Ann Patchett. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being mean. Could be. I just didn't really love it. I like Tom Hanks narrating it, though. So there's that. Oh, the ending, too, is ludicrous. Like, it'll just get me angry if I talk about it, so I'm not going to. All right. Then, in a more positive note, we've moved into sort of 3.5 star territory. This is one of the current canon Star Wars tie-in novels. This is set between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I would say this is closer to the end of The Last Jedi. This is Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse. I really like Rebecca Roanhorse, so. And I've read several Star Wars novels, and this one is not my favorite, but solid. Here's the thing. These books are hard to write. I have to imagine. I've seen several of the people who write them talk about the process and how, like, every plot decision has to be approved. They don't really know as much as you might think they would know writing these stories, and they're on a very tight deadline. So I just think these books are never going to be, they're never going to blow anyone's socks off, probably. What this book does best is Poe. He is really the main character of this story, and I think what she does with him benefits his overall story in the movies a lot, because, you know, a lot went on with Poe in The Last Jedi, and he had a lot of lessons to learn. And so what you see in this book is how he's internalized his lessons and how he's thinking about them, particularly of how he's thinking about his relationship with Leia, and his relationship with leadership, so that when we get to see The Rise of Skywalker, see him at a much more stable leader place, this book helps really fill in that gap. So I think it does that well. I don't think it does most of the other characters super well. And I mean the old characters, because we go back in here with Wedge, and like Wedge Antilles and like his family and things like that. And so that I think was all fun, fleshing out those people more. But I think like her characterization of Rey didn't make sense to me. I think Finn was okay, but I really think Rey's was bad. And luckily, Rey's not in this very much. There's not a whole lot of her, so it wasn't enough to like bring it down or anything. But yeah, I think her focus was Poe, and you can tell, and that's really where the work went into this, and that's fine. And the story was fun and a solid read. So there you go. Then I read most of this in November, but I finished it in December. This was Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book in the Dreamer trilogy. Yes, this is her follow-up to the Raven Cycle trilogy. Quadrilogy? Sorry, it's 4 books. Raven Cycle. And I read these books with my book club, so it's fun to do with the ladies and just talk about it and sort of get into our feelings about these characters and this world. So it's a very communal experience, which is one of the reasons why I view these books so highly. And the thing is in Raven Cycle is that I don't like all the books. I don't like all the characters, but the overall experience has just been so enjoyable. So I was looking forward to this because one of my favorite aspects of the Raven cycle was the dreamer stuff. And I think it is the part of the story in my mind's eye that has the most explorability. And so I think this makes sense for her to write this book. I think also because so many people love Ronan and Adam. I am not personally super fan of Ronan. He's fine. I'm not compelled by him, but I am compelled by the dreamer thing. This book, the first half of it is strange. As you're getting reintroduced into the world and like broadening the world and shifting in perspectives. I think she definitely wants you to be a bit confused and a bit like, what's going on? This is really weird. And I like that because I like weird. So it worked for me. And then as everything comes together, it feels like she's really setting up this, I think, what's going to be a really fun story. I will say that this suffers for a couple of reasons. One, just by the nature of what this is. You have some characters in here that we've been with for a long time, so you know them really, really well. But they're being put up against characters who are brand new, who we don't know really, really well, and you can feel that imbalance at times. I think she introduces a character named Jordan Hennessy, who's done super well, and I felt like immediately as into her as I was into the older characters. But every other new character, I think, is going to take a little bit longer. So that's just the nature of how this story is being told. One thing I really liked is the exploration of Declan. So much like we got kind of an interiority to Poe, I really like the interiority we got with Declan here, because we've never gotten that. You know, we sort of have been told how to feel about Declan, I feel like. But this one allows us to kind of figure Declan out for ourselves. And I really liked him. More than Ronan, even. I think it's interesting to see his motivations and sort of why he does the things he does. And so, yeah, he's becoming a much more interesting character. And if that's how these books work, where everything just becomes more fleshed out and makes more sense. And I just think this could be a really good series. Yeah. I will say that if you're a really big fan of the Pinch relationship, there's not a lot of that here. To be honest with you, I don't really know how they're going to go forward as a couple. We'll see. But there's not a lot of that here, just so you know. I know some people have been mad about that. It's not about the old group. Okay, this is a new group. And Ronan and the Lynch brothers are just sort of at the heart of it. Yeah, so good. Like, I would give this 4 stars. And then one of my most anticipated books of 2020, which the Book of the Month Club released a month early to my just utter delight, was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. So I'm a Liz Moore fangirl. And this book is heavy. I'm going to put it down. I'm a Liz Moore fangirl. I have loved her since Heft, which was her first book. The Unseen World is just, to me, one of the most perfect books ever. And Long Bright River isn't as good as The Unseen World, but it's still good. I feel like you should lower your expectations a little bit, because I think Liz Moore is taking a risk here, writing inside of like this cop thriller mystery genre. And I don't know if I didn't love it as much because I just don't love that genre as much, or if it's just a risk and it may not have paid off as much as, you know, maybe The Unseen World is just more her wheelhouse. I don't know. But it's still good, and it's still a Liz Moore novel, and she's still very character focused, family focused, relationship focused. So this is not fast paced. Yeah, it's not, I mean, there's plot, there has to be, but it's not plot driven, I would say. This is very much about our relationship between 2 sisters over 3 decades of their lives. There is the oldest sister, Mickey, who we have a current timeline and then past timeline, and they're going to come together. It's the structure of how it's written. Mickey is a beat cop in a poor neighborhood in Philadelphia, which is a real neighborhood, Kensington. And then her little sister, Casey, is an addict sex worker in this neighborhood. So trigger warnings for like addiction, drug use, overdose, those kinds of things. So you have, you can already see the sort of the dynamic where you have the sort of the perfect law and order, good sister, Mickey, and then you have the sort of the bad sister, Casey. But it's not that at all, because Liz Moore is so good. So both of these women are just women. They're just complex human beings with pasts and presents and struggles and the good and the bad in both of them. There are things that Casey absolutely is better at in life than Mickey is, and vice versa. And there's no actual villain, because they can both be the villain and they can both be the hero. And that complexity is, I think, what Liz Moore is so good at, and that is present here, and it was great. I've seen people read this who have lots of experience with addiction, and they say it's really well written. So I can't speak to that, but they've spoken to that. This book, the mystery, the sort of whodunit, is that in this neighborhood, some of the sex worker women are being found looking like they OD'd, but actually they've been murdered. And Casey has not been seen for a month. So Mickey's working both those cases. And yeah, we get to see how these kids grew up to be who they are. And that's all well and good. I just think that, I think the reason this didn't live up to the Unseen World for me is, one, it's not my genre. Two, I don't think her prose is as good as it was in the Unseen World. Like, this is written very plainly, and I think that's fine. I think for what she's trying to do and how she's trying to tell this story is probably the correct decision. It's just, again, personal preference. I liked the way the Unseen World was written better. But it's a compelling story. I don't think the mystery is that hard to figure out. I think I had whodunit correctly picked very early on. I think thematically this worked. I think probably the brightest spot beyond the sisters for me was her attention to detail and setting and atmosphere. I just feel like this neighborhood in Philadelphia really comes alive, and I think real world building is incredibly difficult, and I don't think it gets enough attention because these are places that exist. So these places have to hold up to people's actual lived experiences. And I just think that I felt these streets. Like, I felt like I was walking with her on these streets. I could see everything so perfectly. So, like, I had these images in my head, and then I would go to Google Maps and look, and it was like the same. So she just does such a good job with that. I mean, her attention to detail is excellent, and the book is really good. It's just not my favorite thing ever. So there we go. Then finally, my favorite book of the month was How We Fight for Our Lives by Saeed Jones. This is his memoir. I followed Saeed for a while now. He's so great on Twitter, and he has a poetry collection. He's a poet. I feel like I would say he's a writer, but he's a poet. And you could tell he's a poet in this memoir. I mean, it's short. It starts with his time as a young gay black boy in Texas and what that's like as he grows up and then goes to college and sort of just figures out how to fight for his life in all these really often fucked up situations. And then his relationship with his mother is really at the heart of this. And it's just so good. And I listened to it on audio, and I read alongside. It's so good. I mean, the way he writes is beautiful. It's an experience I can never have, but that should absolutely read about. And I don't know. It's like when something is really very good, it's very hard to talk about. Look, this is stellar writing. This is a life experience that a lot of people don't have. This is a beautiful story about a boy who loves his mother. This is talks a lot about the Black gay experience. This is sex heavy in a non-gratuitous way. This is someone being very blunt about their sex life for very good reasons, and it's just so well done. So this is a book you should read. There we go. Yeah. All right, I am going to briefly mention the comics I read. I don't really have a lot to say about them. I read the second volume of Making Friends by Kristen Gudsnook. Back to the Drawing Board. I did not like it. I read Mooncakes, which was fun. But I also read 2 Kelly Thompson comics, and if I read Kelly Thompson, she's probably going to be my favorite. So I read her take on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It's very good, very fun. But my favorite, the one I'm going to talk about for a bit, is Kelly Thompson and doing Nancy Drew. It's a 5-issue short. This is delightful, just absolutely delightful. If you want a fun, quick comic, if you like Nancy Drew and mystery, if you like, I don't know, it's just fun. It's well done. Like, the mystery is good, the action's fun, the characters are great. No complaints. This was just an utter delight. So if you ever just need a quick, utter delight, Nancy Drew. And I hope that the second volume is coming at some point. So there we go. December. I did it in less than 30 minutes. That's right. Bye, guys.